Well, President Joe Biden delivered his second State of the Union address. The president pitching his agenda, touting some of his legislative accomplishments, and promoting bipartisanship. We're getting reaction from Oklahoma lawmakers. Joining us now, Congressman Frank Lucas. Good morning, Congressman.
Hello, good to be with you.
And happy to have you here. Just want to get first your overall reaction to the president's address last night.
I would describe it more as a kickoff re-election speech than a State of the Union speech. Between the president discussing so-called bipartisan efforts in the previous Congress when the Democrats had total control to lambasting us on a variety of other issues, it was more of a campaign speech.
So let's talk about some of the topics that were addressed during this. The president calling for unity to raise the debt ceiling. This is one of the major issues that we've been talking about for several weeks now. What are those negotiations looking like?
Well, at least negotiations have started. Joe Biden initially said he would not negotiate. He wanted a blank check. He wanted it signed. He wanted the present spending levels continued. And that's the real problem. We cannot continue to spend the way we have been. The process that started in COVID and the war in Europe. But Joe wants to have an open checkbook, and he doesn't want any restraints, and that can't be the case. We have to change the trajectory of spending. We have to get a grip on our spending. So at least he acknowledged the negotiations after earlier this year he said it wouldn't be any negotiations.
And speaking of those negotiations, President Biden said some Republicans want to make cuts to Medicare, Social Security. This was a very tense exchange as we saw some Republicans yelling things like liar. So it was pretty tense there. Are these cuts on the table during negotiations? What can you tell us?
No one's made any cuts in Social Security since the program was started in 1935, and that's not going to happen now. The real question is, how in the long haul do you make sure the program survives? I guess Joe was saying that we should raise the taxes. I guess Joe was saying, it's hard to tell for sure what he was saying. But the point is, Social Security is there. It will continue to be there. What we've proposed on the Republican side is a commission to look at how you extend the life of the program. That's not making cuts. That's things like at what age do you retire? Those kind of issues. How do you extend the life of the program, not cut the program?
Okay, I know a lot of people are keeping an eye on that one. So let's talk about bipartisanship. This is a word that we're using a lot. There were calls for bipartisanship from the president. We know there's a lot of division in Congress right now. Do you see any hope of both parties working together to tackle some of these big issues right now?
Well, you've got a divided Congress, 5-seat majority in the House for Republicans, 1-seat majority in the Senate for the Democrats. You've got Joe running for re-election. If they want to work with us, if they want to address the fiscal deficit issues, if they want to do something about incursions on our sovereignty, think about the Chinese balloon that flew over the entire United States before the Biden administration had it shut down. Think about the flood of fentanyl coming across the open border. If they want to work with us, there's a lot of great things that could be done that would make a difference. But you got to work with us. Joe's shown no interest in actually securing the border. And like the balloon, they didn't put it down in the Pacific. They waited till it got all the way to the Atlantic after it crossed us.
So we've also heard from some other Oklahoma lawmakers who say the president missed a lot of opportunities to address some pretty big issues, like you brought some up right now as well, immigration, the economy. What are your thoughts on what he said or didn't say about topics like that?
Well, quite simply put, Joe's been president for 2 years. He was vice president for 8 years. He was a senator for decades. He was a House member before that. He understands how the system works. His focus has to shift from running for re-election to how do you address the problems today. He was very animated last night, most I've seen him in a long time. He must have had a good long nap yesterday afternoon.
And as we kind of wrap up here, I know that there was so much to talk about, but is there anything in particular as you listened yesterday that you wish the president would have addressed or would have elaborated more on?
I wish he had acknowledged that we need to pass the Farm Bill in 2023 to make sure we have food security in this country. I wish he had reached out and focused on energy, whether it is continuing to use our domestic resources like natural gas more efficiently or investing more money in fusion power generation, things about the future. but it was kind of an inward-focused speech. But he'll have another chance, and we will try very hard in Congress to send him good, clean, solid bills and give him a chance to sign things.
What are the next steps here following last night's address here from the GOP and from Congress? What do you want to see happen next?
We have to get our way under work, whether it's the committees I serve on, like the Ag Committee, beginning to write the new Farm Bill, or it's the Science Committee that I'm chairman of, doing the oversight on the billions and billions of dollars spent in the CHIPS and Science Bill, providing oversight and guidance and reauthorizing important legislation. We just have to do our fundamental work. I think in schools that were big enough to have football, they used to call it blocking and tackling.
Okay, Congressman Frank Lucas, we appreciate your time coming on and speaking to us today. Keep us posted on anything happening out there.
We will.